Well, you know, my Spanish isn't that strong either, so please don't feel badly. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, third generation. And just like Claudia said, you know, that's what's great about being a Latino, right? We all come from different backgrounds. Some of us have arrived the US a couple years ago, maybe 15 days ago, and some of us have been in the country, like my grandmother said, for hundreds of years before it was even Mexico. So there you go. So my name is Roberto Ramirez. I work for the Census Bureau in Washington, D.C. It's truly an honor to be here with you today. You know, I actually have been on tour with this organization with Claudia and team over the country. She actually means what she says. I've been in Chicago with her and Minneapolis, Dallas, and here we are in Miami. So great organization. I think they're making a great impact and truly is an honor to be here and join you to talk about Latinos, who are, by the way, changing the demographics of the United States, or I say the face of the United States, for lack of a better word. And Claudia, you really did a great job. So I'm going to expand a little bit more on what you said earlier about all these awesome statistics. So please bear with me. We're going to get started because we have a lot to do and say, and they're only giving me 10 minutes. So I could be here till midnight talking about all this. So let's get going. Okay, so I do have the clicker. Okay, please bear with me here. I know they were showing me how to do this earlier. Oh, is that going backwards? Oh, geez. So let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, so, you know, the 2020 census data I'm about to present comes from our American Count story shown here on the slide. It's available on our website at www.census.gov. The 2020 data provide a new snapshot, if you will, of the racial and ethnic composition of the nation and how we're diversifying as a country. The story provides a new snapshot of the nation's population and how we're all interconnected. I really highly recommend, if you haven't seen or reviewed these articles, please visit our website. So, you know, before I begin, I would like to briefly discuss the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, or what we call OMB, 1997 standards for race ethnicity collection. You know, contrary to popular belief, the United States Census does not set the standards for collection of ethnicity and race data for the federal government. Actually, OMB does. We actually help inform the collection by our research, if you will, and of course, stakeholder engagement. But this is the federal agency that sets the standards. All federal statistical agencies, including the Census Bureau, must adhere to these standards. The OMB minimum categories for data on race and ethnicity for federal statistics, program administrative reporting, and for civil rights compliance are defined as follows. As you can see here, we have two minimum categories for ethnicity, whether you're Latino or not, just to show you how important it is for the government to count this population in the country. And we also have 5 minimum race categories here, as you can see here: American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and white. We're not going to talk about all of these different race categories. I'm only here to talk about the Latino population because we don't have enough time, but I'd be more than happy to talk to you afterwards if you'd like to hear more about it. Okay, so, you know, Claudia talked a little bit about what, you know, there's a lot of division, a lot of different origins within the Hispanic population. But I like to say that the Census Bureau, we're a uniter. We're interested in counting everyone, all Latinos, in this case, for example. And this slide shows the Hispanic origin question that was actually used in the 2020 census. The 2020 census, as in previous censuses, the category Hispanic or Latino includes all individuals who identify with one or more nationalities or ethnic groups originating in Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Central South America, and other Spanish cultures. And this includes, of course, the check boxes that you can see here. And also we have a write-in line for those individual Hispanic groups that don't have a checkbox. So for example, Salvadorian, Dominicans, how many of you here are from Guatemala, Colombia? A little bit of everything, right? Venezuelans are in the house, right? So please don't feel neglected. The reason why we have checkboxes for these larger Hispanic groups is because they make up about 85% of all Latinos in the country, okay? So that's the largest groups. But as you can see here, we have a write-in for all the other Hispanic origins as well, and people can write it in and we collect it. And soon, hopefully publish it, which is our next data products will be coming out in the next year or so. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and get into the data? All right. So here we begin presenting results from the 2020 census. This table shows the U.S. population by Hispanic or Latino origin between the last census, 2010, and the 2020 censuses, respectively. The Hispanic Latino grew by from 50.5% or 16.3% of the U.S. population in 2010 to 62.1 million, 18.7% in 2020, as again highlighted here in the red box. Between 2010 and 2020, the Hispanic population grew by 23%, slightly more than half, 51.1% of the total U.S. growth in this past decade is attributed to the Hispanic population. This slide here is a graphical form of the previous table shown. As you can hear, so it's shown in light blue. You can see that number 50.5 million, as I just mentioned, in 2010, and in 2020, 61.1 million. And in the darker blue represents the percentage of the population that's non-Hispanic. So 83.7% back in 2010, down to 81.3% in 2020. I have some slides coming up. They're going to talk a little bit about the future as well, future projections, and we'll talk a little bit about what the Hispanic population is going to look like, 30, 40 years from now. We'll get through those in a second. Okay, so, the 2020 census data also enables us to examine the racial and ethnic composition of the population under age 18. Claudia talked about that, right? What was the mode age, 11, which was an incredible statistic, right? And the population age 18 and over. So the racial and ethnic composition among children is really quite different from adults. This comparison offers insights into the demographics of younger generations in this country and gives you an idea of what the future will bring. The Hispanic origin population under 18 and over on the right-hand side of the table went from 14.2% in 2010 to 16.8% in 2020. And the Hispanic origin child population under the age of 18 on the left-hand side of the table went from 23.1% in 2010 to 25.6, almost 26% in 2020. So a vast growing population because we're a younger population and we have more children. It's just a fact. It's what's happening, right? On the other hand, the white alone adult population 18 years and over went from 74.7% in 2010 to 64.1% in 2020. And so you can see the decline of the population, and this is projected to continue over the next several decades. So I'm throwing a lot of stats at you. Let me know if I'm going a little too fast. I'm always very conscious of time, so just let me know. So let me just slow it down a little bit. Okay, all right. So this slide here shows the 2020 total Hispanic population by state compared to the 2010 census. The light blue bars are the 2010 census counts, and the dark blue bars represent the 2020 census. So what I want you to take away from this graph is that, well, we've been mentioning, right? The Hispanic population grew numerically in actually all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. Texas, California, and Florida showed the largest Hispanic numeric increase. Each of the three states added over 1 million people of Hispanic origin within the last decade. Texas added nearly 2 million Latinos during the last decade. California, 1.6 million. And Florida, the state we're in right now, 1.5 million. So you're part of that count. So if you haven't been to our website, you really need to go because we have some really great stuff out there. And what's great about it, it's free because you paid for it, right? Government, with using taxpayers' money, we produce some great data. And I always like to highlight our data visualization products that we have on our website. Our data visualization for race, ethnicity in the United States presents racial and ethnic composition and more information on the population size of the different groups. I'm just going to highlight a couple of slides and graphs from these data products and let you know, so you can be aware of it and you can use it. So here's a screenshot of the Hispanic population in the United States by state. As you can see, the states with the highest percent Hispanic are concentrated in the southwestern part of the United States, Texas, where I'm from, and you can see Arizona and New Mexico. In the southeast of the United States, Florida has the largest percent of Hispanic population at 26.5%, Florida being the sixth largest Hispanic origin population in the nation. And if you were at this website, you will be able to filter and look at different states and highlight it over it. This is not an interactive slide here, it's just a snapshot of it. But if you were to go to the site, you were able to click on each of the different states and get more statistics per state, if you will, and more data. I just want to give you a little flavor what's available. Okay, so let's talk about the great state of Florida. So here is a county-based map showing the percentage of the county that's Latino for the state of Florida. You can see the counties in the south are the counties with the highest percent Hispanic in the state, particularly Miami-Dade County, Henry County. So you can see over 50% of the county is Hispanic. In fact, what's outstanding here, should I say, is if you look at the Miami-Dade County and more particularly, you can see that, can anybody guess what the percentage of Latinos there are in this county? Actually, I'm going to quiz you. It's, well, in 2020, almost 70%. So pretty high, but growing. And so, which is a very high statistics if you think about it, right, for the particular county. And so all these, as I mentioned, all these data products are available on our site. And, and actually, I'm very excited because I've been doing this presentation over and presenting along where, we are human over the last few months. And I actually have a brand new slide I want to really excited to share with you because the data we just released it. And so, for many of you might be aware is that we do a census every 10 years, right? In our first census, we conducted it in 1790. And we've been doing a census ever since, right? And why do we do a census? We do it because we distribute power, right? Members of Congress are apportioned based on total pop among all the states, all 435 members, right? But we also distribute federal funds as well, which is a more modern use of the census numbers, particularly starting in the 1960s and 70s and on. But it's too expensive to do a census every year. It's just impossible. In fact, I'm actually starting to work now on the 2030 census. It takes about 8 years to start working on the census. It just takes that long to do that. And despite my youthful looks, I've worked already in 3 censuses already. So just to show you how long it goes. So I've covered a lot of data from the 2020 census, but I want to highlight data from our population estimates program that uses vital statistics. So once we do a census, we update the population in a time series throughout the decade, right? So we use vital statistics for that, births, deaths, and migration. And as you can see here on this table, so we counted about 62 million Hispanics in 2020. Now, as of 2021, this is our latest, we call vintage 21 national estimates. We are now at 62,647,000 Latinos. We've added over 500,000 Latinos in the country over the last year. And for the state of Florida, we added over 100,000 Latinos in the state. And this is all based on current data. This is the most current data you can get. And I'm more than happy to share with you more of this information if you like. And I'm just so excited to unveil it here. So first time. And so what does that represent? About a 1% increase change overall between 2020 and 21. It's like 1 year, but it represents 2.3% increase for the state of Florida. Very, very significant for 1 year. And we're used to talking about, years and decades, this is 1 year change. All right, so now let the show begin. Okay, let's go. All right, so now we'll cover our projection data on this slide. So this slide shows the Hispanic population in millions, starting from 1970, should I say, to 2060. If you look at the light blue bars on the left-hand side of the graph, these bars represent census counts from 1970 to 2020. In 1970, the Hispanic population was estimated at 9.3 million. And of course, the recent census, 2020, as you know already, know that number really well, at 62.1 million. This means that the Hispanic population grew by 568% between 1970 and 2020. Now, the dark blue bars on your right-hand side are projections of the Hispanic population, and these include varying assumptions of future fertility, mortality, and international migration rates. And as you can see, it is projected that the Hispanic population will increase to about 111 million by the year 2060. So This is our middle series. Some argue that it might be even sooner. We have what's called a low series with low estimates, a middle, and a higher series, like higher fertility, for example. But this is what we're looking at over the next 40 years in the country. So as Claudia also says, and the data shows it, that this slide shows that the same data presented in the previous slide, but it displays it as a percentage of the US population. And you can see that the percent of the total population that reported Hispanic Latino also increased over the last 50, 60 years. As shown in the light blue bars, the Hispanic population increased from 4.6% in 1970 to 16.1% in 2010. And as of course, as you know, it's now 18.7% in 2020. And if you look at the dark blue bars, by the year 2050, it's projected that more than 1/4 of the US population will be Hispanic, Hispanic origin. And by 2060, it's projected that nearly a third of the US population will be Latino by the year 2060. So tremendous growth, lots of changes are coming and happening. And this is something, as I go across the country, to say that this is a real demographic shift in the demographics of the country. It's a real phenomenon. It's really happening. And we've been documenting it very well since 1970 when we first had our first, well, we didn't call it Hispanic back then in 1970, we call it a Spanish origin term back in 1970. And so, as I mentioned, I would love to, I'm available all day today. If you'd like to talk a little bit more, I would love to chat with you, but it's really been a pleasure. And thank you so much for having me here today.